This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And today a very, very special guest, a longtime friend. It's Jim Rickards. He's an advisor to the Pentagon, the White House, Congress, the CIA, and Department of Defense. But more importantly, that in today's world of, let's say, fake news, misinformation, and I don't know what else we have, what we all need are credible sources. And the reason I talk about Jim's background with the Pentagon, the White House, Congress, the CIA, and Department of Defense, he's an insider's insider. So I look forward to all of his YouTube, anything he blurts out there, I'm consuming. So we need credible resources today. So I'm very honored to have Jim on the program. So joining me is Kim and our neighbor, Scott Shermer, who lives directly across the street, and we're the three diehard fans. And we listen to whatever Jim says, we listen to. So welcome to the program, Jim.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Kim. It's great to be with you.
Oh, great to have you here. And I just want to add that, Jim, you're the author of The New Great Depression, Aftermath, The Road to Ruin, and several other books. What I love is every time we have you on the show, there is some new revelation. And I know that's what's coming today. So I'm very, very excited. So welcome.
And one more thing I want to say is that all the years I started with Currency Wars. And I was like,
yep.
And Jim...
That book came out in 2011. I wrote a lot of it starting in 2010. And I tell it still sells well. You know, you get the royalty checks every now and then, which is always nice for something that's 11 years old. That's a real backlist item, a bit of a classic. But if you go to around page 270, give or take somewhere toward the end of the book, there's a whole section on Ukraine, Russia, and using natural gas as a weapon. Now, this wasn't 2014 when they took Crimea, or 2020 when the invasion was being prepared, or 2022 when it broke out. This was 2011. So 11 years ago, I was saying, this is going to be used as a weapon, and here it comes. So it's kind of interesting that the war was completely unnecessary, and like you say, you saw it coming 10 years away.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring up how long we've been following you is because you've always sounded the drum, like the dum, 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 dum. You've been warning everybody. But in the last, I would say, year, your pounding has gotten louder. The message is similar, but your warnings are more dire, louder, more direct. So that's what we want to talk to you about today, is how dire are we? Where are we today? What is happening?
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So the one thing I had a question on, you talked about Executive Order 14067. What is your concern on Executive Order 14067, which was just signed with Biden and company only a few months ago? What is your concern 14067?
Yeah, it has a number of parts, and the thing with executive orders, or for that matter, legislation, I can say you have to read the fine print, and you do, but you have to actually consider the hidden agendas. Like, I can read it, anyone can read it, it's a public document, but what's behind it and where are they going with it? And that's really where the urgency comes in. And it's basically an order that accelerates the U.S. movement towards a central bank digital currency, so-called CBDC. These are happening all over the world. Beijing already has one. They're past the prototype stage. They kind of rolled that out during the Winter Olympics, last February. Believe it or not, the Bahamas has a digital currency. There are a few other countries that have already gone in that direction. Europe is the European Central Bank is very far along. The U.S. and the Federal Reserve, because they print the currency, they understood the importance of it. They were watching it, but they were kind of taking their time, like, hey, we're the biggest payment currency, biggest reserve currency in the world, which the dollar is, and we don't want to race into something if it's not thought out. And they were doing a kind of a joint venture R&D program with MIT. Okay, and they got some experts there, so that seems to make sense. But all of a sudden they accelerated it. And they said, no, we got to move fast on this and we got to catch up. And that's what 14067 was about. But so that's kind of what you could get from reading. But what's the hidden agenda? Well, the first of all, just a little bit of background on central bank digital currencies. It's still the dollar, so a digital dollar is still a dollar, a digital Chinese yuan is still a yuan, a digital euro is still a euro. So it's not a new currency, but it is a new payment channel, and it is a new form of the currency, if you want to think of it that way, even though it's still the dollar. And so it goes hand in hand with getting rid of cash. In other words, I'll spend, in a minute, we'll get into what the central bank digital currency, what the hidden agenda is behind that. But as I go through the list of really bad things that can happen, you say, well, okay, but I still got cash. I can go down to the bank and get a, whatever, $10,000 or $100,000 in cash. By the way, that's not easy to do. I say that.
It's not.
Legally you can. It's legal. It's not illegal. But try doing it. They'll tell you to come back, make an appointment. They don't have that much money. They got to ship it in. You better show up with like your birth certificate and 5 character witnesses, and then they'll report you. They'll report you to the Treasury, actually the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network knows the word crime, FinCEN for short, Northern Virginia, and you'll go in a file next to Ayman al-Zawahiri. So it's not so easy to get your cash, but you can in theory, and that's the alternative. So they have to not only push the digital currency agenda, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they have to get rid of cash, because as long as you have cash, you can do an end run around this. So these two things are coming down the track pretty fast. Now, flipping back to the central bank digital currency, it's not a cryptocurrency. It's not on a blockchain. A blockchain is just a ledger. They've been around since the 80s, no big deal. But this ledger will be maintained by somebody, probably the Federal Reserve. But there could be a new government agency doing it. Maybe
so Jim, a ledger that keeps track of everybody's transactions.
Well, it does two things. It does that. You're right, Kim. But it's kind of like a bank account. So we might quickly end up in a world where I have an account at a bank. You guys have accounts at banks. Well, those banks are either members of the Federal Reserve System, or they're smaller banks that are correspondents of bigger banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo. Heaven help you with Wells Fargo. But the point being, the banks kind of keep all the books. We might be in a world where you would have an account at the Fed. Kim and Robert and I and everyone listening would have an account at the Fed. We'd have it on our iPhone or our Samsung or whatever our mobile phone is. And if I send you money, the Fed takes it out of my account and sends it to your account. End of story. Kind of like a Venmo type of thing with, larger denominations, et cetera. That has implications in terms of disintermediating the banks. Like if you can do that, which you can technically, who needs banks? But to your point, Kim, the selling point is, well, it's better, faster, cheaper. Okay, which it is. So, for example, I go to a bookstore and I buy a book with a credit card. So I get the book. Well, the merchant, the retailer, has this receivable, and so they sell it to what's called a merchant acquirer. Merchant acquirers are finance businesses that buy a whole bunch of receivables from a whole bunch of little retailers or even larger retailers. They then take that bundle of receivables, now we're talking hundreds of millions or more, and they deliver it to MasterCard or Visa, and then they get paid. Obviously, they make a little money on that. MasterCard and Visa then send those receivables to the banks that issue the credit cards, and then the bank sends me a bill and I pay the bill. So think about that. I buy a book, but you get 5 financial intermediaries. You get me, the retailer, the merchant acquirer, MasterCard or Visa, and the issuing bank. And the total fees are, like 2.5%, 3%. So why do we need 5 financial intermediaries with, let's say, 3% fees to buy a book when you can just have an account at the Fed and everything whips through the Fed, fast and easy, and inexpensive? So, and that's all true. That is how it could work if you had this digital dollar. The problem is, but let's assume the banks continue to play a role, because the Fed's job, people talk about, it's the Fed's job, reduce unemployment, squash inflation, now they want a Green New Deal. The Fed's supposed to make sure that nobody lends money to ExxonMobil, even though we're out of oil. But those are like ancillary. The Fed's main job from the beginning, from 1913, really 1907 onward, is to prop up the banks. Like that's why they're there. So I doubt they'll disintermediate the banks. But either way, you're going to have a faster, cheaper, better system for making payments. But what else? And this is the key, and this is why we're sounding the alarm a little bit on Executive Order 14067. So once it's digital, a couple things. First of all, they know your whereabouts. Now, they already know your whereabouts from your iPhone, unless you turn your iPhone off, and not just turn it off, but put it in what's called a Faraday sac, which is a special woven fabric of a metallic weave that blocks radiation. And by the way, do the same thing with your EasyPass and a bunch of other stuff. But unless you do that, then they know where you are through your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever. So they already know your whereabouts. We have facial recognition software. People go, I'm going to wear a mask and sunglasses and pull my hat down. Okay. They have what's called gait recognition software, GAIT, meaning how you walk. Believe it or not, everybody walks slightly differently. Wow. And it's like a fingerprint. So even if you're wearing a mask, they see you walking down the street. They're like, that's Kim, or that's Robert, or Jim, or as the case may be. So they already know a lot, and they know your whereabouts. But now they're going to know what you're buying, right? Because every product has a SKU, stock keeping code, stock keeping unit code, with a QR scan, digital scan. They're going to know what you're buying. And this digital currency is programmable, meaning they can block certain purchases or not. So let's say you donate money to Elise Stefanik. She's an up-and-coming Republican member of the Republican leadership at an upstate district in New York, or heaven help you if you donate money to Donald Trump. They'll know that, first of all, and you might find that your account's frozen. Or let's say they want to see right now, if you work and you're an employee, it's a technical term defined, and you get paid and you get a W-2 at the end of the year. But they withhold it from your payment. They get paid every 2 weeks or whatever. Employer withholds taxes from your wages. And then you get your W-2, file your tax return, you reconcile, and maybe you get a refund, maybe you owe a little bit. But they got the money up front through withholding. But that's not true for independent contractors and professionals, so doctors, lawyers, architects, landscaping. So anybody who's not a W-2 employee doesn't have withholding. They got to pay their taxes. But what if they could just take it out of your bank account? It's like, okay, you're a doctor, but you put the money in this bank, and I'm just going to take, some number, 20% out of your bank account every month. And we'll send you a statement, 1099, file your tax return, and, you owe or you get a refund, but no more honor system. In other words, no more waiting till year end. We're going to take it out of your bank account. Or what if, as a form of stimulus, even though it's not stimulus, but they'll call it that, they say you get money in your bank account. Okay, but we're going to put a countdown clock on your bank account. And if you don't spend 10% of it in the next 30 days, we're going to deduct, that much. So in other words, use it or lose it. So now all of a sudden, I worked hard. I made this money. It's in the bank. But you're telling me if I don't spend it, I'm going to lose it anyway. So I might as well go spend it. And of course, the idea is to stimulate the economy. But the point is, the number of things you can do, from surveillance to identifying your political preferences, withholding taxes, account freezes, account seizures, time limitations on your money. Your money's like a countdown clock. It expires after a certain period of time, et cetera. I could go on and on, but you take the point, which is it's not your money anymore. I've always said to people, you put your money in the bank, it's not your money, it's the bank's money, and they'll give it to you if they feel like it. Well, this is that same idea on stilts. And this is like, and now the government's involved, and it's easier, everything easier, faster, cheaper about payments is also easier, faster, cheaper about surveillance, confiscation, account freezes, et cetera. And then people say to me, they explain that what I just said to you guys, and they say, oh, that'll never happen. It's already happening. I mean, it's already here. Talk to the Freedom Convoy in Canada, what my neo-fascist friend, Chrystia Freeland, who's the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, did to the Freedom Convoy. Now, okay, they pulled into Ottawa in the middle of winter, and I was just in Ottawa a couple of days ago, by the way. It's pretty city, but pretty small actually. They stalled traffic. They blew the horns at 3 a.m. All Trudeau had to do was come out, say who are your leaders, meet with them, hear their demands, give them a few, not all. They would all go home, and that would be the end of it. He didn't do that. He went into hiding. He's sort of a coward. He's not very smart. But Chrystia Freeland is a tough cookie, to put it in polite terms. She called the banks in Canada. Now, the difference between Canada and the U.S., they only have 5 big banks. We've got like 5,000 or something. But there's, CIBC, Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Montreal, Nova Scotia, and TD. She called the banks, identified the bank accounts of the truckers, and froze all their accounts. She didn't stop there. She then called the crypto exchanges because, I know what cold wallets are, but a lot of people put their money in crypto exchanges, got their names, froze their crypto accounts, seized their trucks. They couldn't feed their family. They were put in jail, held without bail, literally couldn't feed their family in the middle of winter, all because of a non-violent protest. And when I emphasize there was no violence, annoying. So give them a traffic citation for blowing your horn at 3 a.m, $500 fine, appear in court, whatever. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been any accountability, but being held in jail without bail, where all of your money's been frozen, your assets have been seized, they're non-returnable, and you can't feed your family for what, a non-violent protest? But my point is, and that's an exercise in fascism, of course, but my point is that they did it all through digital banking systems and cryptocurrency systems. So, and they're doing it in China. They have what's called a social credit score. So if you, bad acts are, start with smoking, you're smoking, but you take a train to go to a protest, okay? And there are many runs on the bank. There's a group in China informing, don't pay your mortgages, because, in China it's a little different, because here the builder builds a house, and you guys build a house, a buyer comes along, buys the house, gets a mortgage, pays the mortgage, but they get the house. In China, you take out your mortgage before the house is built, and then you owe the money, but the down payment and the mortgage money is used by the builder to build the house, and you move in like a year or two later, but you're already on the hook for the mortgage, except that the developer stole the money and didn't finish the houses. But the banks are saying you got to pay the mortgage, and people are saying no. So people are traveling around China to join these protests, but in China you have a social credit score. So they identify you through the banking system and then turn off your ability to buy a train ticket or a plane ticket.
Wow.
And then it goes on from there. You post something, the worst thing you do in China is compare Chairman Xi to Winnie the Pooh. He kind of looks like Winnie the Pooh. So, it's true. And so if you post a Winnie the Pooh meme or something, good luck getting your kids into school. Good luck getting health care for yourself, et cetera. So my point is, this is already being done. And then people say it'll never happen here. Why not? Show me something that was really poorly done abroad that isn't being done here sooner than later, particularly with the Biden administration. So I'll leave it at that. But the point is, this is more than just a digital currency. This is more than just convenience and cost savings, which it is. That's how they sell it. This gives them total surveillance, total control. It's the ultimate realization of the total surveillance state. And just look at what they did to Russia. We don't have to debate the war in Ukraine, but they froze the treasury notes held by the Central Bank of Russia. Well, what's the difference between that and default? Like, why do you buy a treasury note? Well, you buy them because you think the treasury is going to give you your money back and with interest. But when they freeze them, they're like, well, no, actually, we're not giving you your money back. So what's the difference between that and default? I would say there is no difference. So we've kind of already defaulted on treasury notes. Yes, selectively with a political wrapper around it. I get it. But and given what's going on in China, Europe, and the U.S. sanctions on Russia, which are tantamount to a default, tell me they're not going to use this digital dollar for political enforcement. And the answer is they will.
So Jim, this is like George Orwell's Big Brother is watching.
On steroids.
It is.
Well,
interesting thing about George Orwell, his book, novel you're referring to, of course, 1984, which he wrote in 1948. So the 1984 was just taking 48 and turning it backwards. And that's how you got to 1984. But he was, of course, he was a futurist. Of course, he was looking at where we are today and brilliantly. But he was really writing about what was going on at the time. He was describing a Stalinist system, but he didn't have, or he didn't, go down the path of imagining the technology. He was imagining fascism, totalitarianism, thought control, thought police, etc., but in a context that kind of looked like the industrial society of 1948. And he said it would get worse and it would be global, and he was right about both things. But compare that to Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, where it was very technological, and to the point of, children were formed in vats, you didn't actually give birth, etc. And they did genetic engineering to change your IQ because they needed some dumb people to do menial tasks. What's the difference between that and an mRNA vaccine?
Wow.
No difference. Yeah. Well, no, they are. Yeah. It's genetic. These are, by the way, these are not vaccines. One of the criticisms I got for my book, the New Great Depression, which came out in early 2021. I wrote most of that in 2020. The interesting thing about that book, and again, I wrote it in 2020. It took a while to get published because the supply chain was messed up. My new book's on the supply chain. But I said, masks don't work, lockdowns don't work, social distancing does not work, and there is no vaccine. And so today, here we are in 2022, and what do you hear? Well, masks actually don't work. Even Fauci admits that. Vaccines, 5 million people in December 2021, 5 million people double vaxxed and boosted, so 3 shots, some of them on their way to 4, got COVID.
Yep.
So tell me it stops COVID. Tell me it stops the spread. It doesn't. Of course it doesn't.
Well, now the narrative is it's Trump's fault. The vaccine is now Trump's fault.
Now that it's failed so badly, we got to blame Trump. But the point, my point is, it's nice in 2022 for people to say, you actually got that right. But we actually knew in 2020, this is because it was censored and suppressed for 2 years, and you were deplatformed and criticized and called a conspiracy nut and tinfoil hat and all that jazz. It took 2 years for the truth to come out. Now the truth is coming out, but we actually knew it at the time. When I said lockdowns don't work, my source for that, because I always source everything, I had like 200 footnotes in the book.
Right. So
was a paper written in 2006.
I hate to interrupt this thing. We need to take a break here.
Quick break.
But again, Jim, like I said, the most important thing today are credible sources. And for Scott Sherman, our neighbor, and Kim and myself, you are that credible source. Is that a drone circling your house right now? I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned of what you've been saying to us.
Yeah, but I know when we come back, you're going to have some solutions.
If Jim has been turned into a frog, something happened. We'll be right back.
Last month, reports of inflation hitting 9.1% sent markets into a death spiral. It's the steepest rise in the cost of living since 1981. Biden, Yellen, and Powell, they might need to check the definition of transitory because this spells disaster for tens of millions of Americans and their savings. At this rate, the dollars under your mattress will lose half their buying power by 2030. But Robert saw this coming. He's seen it before. He knew that equities would be crushed by inflation, which is why he recommends real assets like art. The same assets that outpaced the S&P 500 by more than double for the last 25 years. In fact, the last time inflation was this high, it did even better, appreciating by 33% annually according to the Masterworks All Art Index. The only problem, unless you're a millionaire, investing in art has been nearly impossible. But now, thanks to Masterworks, you can invest in arts like Banksy and Basquiat in just a few taps, and the results speak for themselves. Masterworks has delivered average net returns of 26.8% to their investors since 2019. And with inflation on the rise, demand for Masterworks is through the roof, and there's even a wait list. But our listeners can skip it by going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/CD. Hey everyone, it's Sarah at the Rich Dad Radio Show. Let me tell you, good sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the 8 Sleep Pod is the ultimate sleep machine. I live in Arizona. It's over 100 degrees today, and it's only expected to get hotter throughout the week. And the pod is the only sleep technology that dynamically cools and heats each side of the bed to maintain the optimal sleeping temperature for what your body needs. With the pod, you can start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And clinical data shows that 8 Sleep users experience up to 19% increase in recovery, up to 32% improvement in sleep quality, and up to 34% more deep sleep. And 8 Sleep recently just launched the next generation of the pod. The new Pod 3 enables more accurate sleep and health tracking with double the amount of sensors, delivering you the best sleep experience on Earth. And all you need to do is go to 8sleep.com/richdad to start sleeping cool this summer and save up to $150 on the pod. 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, select countries in the EU, and Australia.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. It's a very, very special program. We might have to have it in 3 parts, Sarah, because the information is priceless. Our guest today is a longtime friend, Jim Rickards, but like I said earlier in the show, in today's world of fake news, misinformation, and a lot of political opinions and emotional garbage going through the webs and all this stuff, Jim is that credible source that myself, Kim, and our friend Scott Shermer lives across from Kim and I. We've been friends for 25 years, and we listen to Jim all the time. So I appreciate his podcasts and his work and all the things he's doing, the warnings he's sending out now. As I said earlier, he's been sounding this alarm for about 25, 50 years, I think. And now the alarm is getting louder as technology changes. He talked about Executive Order 14067. What does that mean? And most people don't. So anyway, Jim was a former advisor to the Pentagon, the White House, Congress, the CIA, and Department of Defense.
And he also has a fantastic financial newsletter called Strategic Intelligence. So you want to keep up with Jim and what's coming. Subscribe to that newsletter.
You missed one organization. It's called the FBI. But anyway, Jim, thank you very much for being part of the Rich Dad family of the world and all this. And we cherish your advice. So
we're talking about the surveillance and the surveillance state and this whole digital currency. You talk about the asset emancipation system as actually a way around this surveillance state. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, let me say we have to go to a solution pretty quickly because people are on suicide watch right now. So, Jim, any brightness of the future here?
Maybe helpful.
Well, maybe we can not just save wealth, but save some lives. Kim, I kind of tell it like it is. So I'm not trying to. People go, well, you must be the biggest pessimist, and I'm not. Temperamentally, I'm an optimist. I do look on the bright side, but I'm also a realist. And so when I see things coming and I understand them, and I have a lot of training and experience and all that, I just explain what it is, and the audience appreciates that. But I never give a kind of a dire forecast, and I do that all the time without offering some solutions. I think you almost have a responsibility to do that if you're going to paint a bad picture. Yep. So I really consider myself as much a problem solver as anything, but I always say before you can solve the problem, you have to understand the problem. So that's where the analysis comes in. But let's talk about solutions. So if they're going to get rid of cash and they're working on it, and they're going to put you into a digital dollar, and they're working on that, and Executive Order 14067 puts that on a fast track. And if the digital dollar can be used for all the things I described, which it can, surveillance, account freezes, account seizures, putting countdown clock on your money, spend
tracking,
it.
actually create or molding behavior.
Correct.
What they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So what are the workarounds? How can you get out of that system? Well, if all this is being empowered by digital technology, which it is, you sort of have to go non-digital. In other words, this is the, lean right, go left, or, vice versa. So what are the digital assets that work as money? Non-digital assets that work as money? What are the non-digital assets that work as stores of wealth, et cetera? Well, there's a bunch of them. You can start with gold and silver, but I would include real estate, natural resources, water, energy, et cetera. And you can even do some of this in the stock market. I'm not. I think stock market is going to go a lot lower, so I'm not saying run out and buy call options on the S&P 500 index, but I'm saying there are sectors that I think will outperform, starting with the energy sector. But the first thing you need is a certain amount of gold and silver, and don't buy. If you want to trade or get price exposure, that's fine. It's up to you. But if you're trying to preserve wealth and sort of get outside the digital dragnet, which is what we're talking about, physical gold bullion. I've always recommended the 1 ounce American Gold Eagle, but more, and I still do. It's a good store of wealth. But I also think in terms of practical terms, like what about a world where the power grid's down, the electricity's out, or the digital state has become so pervasive that you don't want to be part of it, et cetera, and you still got to buy food for your family. The 1/4 ounce American Gold Eagle is really interesting. It's 8 grams. That's what a 1/4 ounce, as a 1/4 ounce is, and it's the size and gold content and durability of the old British sovereign, which until 1914 was how you was money, not just money, but it's how you move money around. It's how if you traveled, you had a purse with, British sovereigns. Those are like 7.9 grams, but basically the same thing. It's a 1/4 ounce. And the reason is the 1 ounce coin, and again, I do recommend this as a store of wealth, but at the market today, they're worth, I don't know, $17.50 an ounce. It's been up to $2,000 recently. It could go lower or higher, but just take 1,800 an ounce as kind of a central tendency. Well, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of groceries. It's probably more than you need. Whereas the 1/4 ounce is closer to $500. For that matter, a 1 ounce American Silver Eagle is about $21 at the market. There's a little premium when you go out and buy them, but so 10 of those is $200. So and by the way, when I was a kid, we had silver dollars. Your grandfather wanted to give you a 10th birthday present. He gave you 10 silver dollars in a stack. You're like, thanks, Grandpa.
Right.
But that was money good. That was they were in circulation. You can't find them now because everyone's put them in collections. But so the American Silver Eagle 1 ounce worth about $20. The 1/4 ounce Gold Eagle worth about $500. Those are really practical forms of what we call in Philadelphia walking around money. I mean, you can actually spend those. You can walk around with it and you can buy stuff. But my point is they're not digital. So now all of a sudden I go to, if I'm in a rural area, know your local farmer, and you go down there and you want blueberries or tomatoes or corn or fresh bacon or whatever. There'll come a time when they'll take that. They'll say, yeah, okay, I'll take, we agree on a price, but they'll take it in silver coins or gold coins because they're thinking the same way you are. It's not like you're the only person who's trying to get out from under the digital dictatorship. So you'll find willing buyers and sellers, more and more people doing this, and then it'll gain currency, no pun intended. And so that's a good solution. The 1 ounce. Sorry, go ahead.
Are you worried, Jim, at all that the government will make it illegal like Roosevelt did in 1933?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what Roosevelt did in 1933. He did make gold contraband. You're right about that. But they say, well, he confiscated all the gold. Well, he didn't exactly do that. What he did, he ordered Americans to hand in their gold, but he gave them $20.67 equivalent. That was the price of gold at the time, $20.67 an ounce. They call it $20 to round number. He gave you $20 an ounce for your gold. So, and by the way, that's required under the Constitution. Read the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The government is allowed to take property, but may only do so for a purpose and only upon payment of just compensation. That's what the Fifth Amendment says. So, so the government can seize property, but they have to have a good reason, and they have to give you that amount of money. And Roosevelt did. Now, it was an insider trade because he knew that he was going to devalue the dollar, raise the price, ended up being $35 an ounce. And what he was thinking was, well, if we're going to raise the price from $20 to $35, there's a delta there. I want to capture the money for the government. I don't want American citizens to make out on this. So he bought all the gold at $20, then raised the price to $35. And the government, U.S. government, got the profit. And by the way, that profit was put into something called the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which still exists to this day. It's a slush fund in the billions that can be used by the U.S. Treasury without congressional approval. See, when the Congress ratified this in the Gold Exchange Act of 1934, they said, oh, yeah, you got this Exchange Stabilization Fund. You can do whatever you want with it. You don't have to come back to the Congress for an appropriation. In 1994, during the Mexican financial crisis, collapse, the so-called tequila crisis, Robert Rubin, who was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time, went to the Congress and said, you got to bail out Mexico because of banks, U.S. banks. And the Congress said, are you crazy? We spend taxpayer money to bail out Mexico, get out of here. And Rubin went back to the Treasury and he used the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which was the profit from the 1934 insider trade, to bail out Mexico in 1994. And it's been used since. So that money is still there, that original insider trade. But my point being, Roosevelt was bound by the Constitution to give people something, and he did. So now let's come forward to the future. So let's say the government wants to repeat that process. Well, last time I looked at the Constitution, which was a couple of days ago, it hadn't changed. They still have to do that. But here's the difference. Roosevelt could pull off his stunt, his insider trade, because the price of gold was pegged at the time. He changed the peg, but at the beginning and the end of the process, it was pegged. The dollar today is not pegged to gold. We can get into market manipulation, but that's a separate subject. But there is a market in gold, and gold fluctuates, goes up and down. So imagine a world where the government's actually thinking about doing that. Right now, they're not, because the government doesn't want anyone to think that they actually think gold is a monetary asset, so they don't talk about it. But if it got to that point, and the government was thinking about doing something like that, and by the way, when people bring that up, I just say to myself, well, you actually you're looking for reasons not to buy gold. Don't waste my time. It says, well, the government's going to steal the gold. It's like, fine, don't buy gold. Good luck to you. But technically, if they had to do it, imagine the world where that's happening. So this is where a lot of analysis falls down. People they hold everything constant and they think of one thing and they go, it wouldn't work or whatever. But that's not how the world works. The whole world evolves. So you say what you have to do is imagine the world where the government's actually thinking about doing that, right? This is the world where gold's already at 5,000, on its way to 10,000. The wheels are coming off the international monetary system. Confidence is being lost. Banks are being closed, and gold is going to the moon. And now the government comes along and the Fifth Amendment still applies. They'd have to pay you $10,000 an ounce, because that's the world where this would be happening. Now, you may or may not want to take it, but you're not talking about $1,700 an ounce. You're talking about $10,000 an ounce, or maybe even more. And the point is, at least you made 10 times your money. But I also think that the other big difference between 1933 and today is in 1933, people trusted the government. The government wasn't perfect, but they're like, yeah, happy days are here again. FDR is not Hoover. He's trying his best, trying to get us out of the Depression. Unemployment was 20%. There was a sense that Americans had to pull together and make sacrifices, and if that was one of them, they would go along with it. Today, that's not true. Trust is gone. The FBI is like, Biden's Gestapo. It's not funny. It's true.
It's just
it's
sad.
and so on. The FBI is corrupt. Intelligence community is corrupt. The White House is. I waver between corrupt and incompetent. I sort of incompetence and stupidity are my default positions because they're a sufficient explanation, but they're actually not. This is all according to plan. So in that world, they might try to do something like this, but they're not trusted. So I don't know how much compliance there would be. As a lawyer, I never encourage non-compliance, but as a realist, I say, well, maybe people won't be lining up at the Treasury stations to hand in their gold. So two things. Number one, the Fifth Amendment still applies. Well, three things. One, the Fifth Amendment still applies. They have to compensate you. Two, if this happened, it would be in a world where gold's already well into five figures and, at least you made a nice profit. And number three, I think compliance might be sketchy at best. So no, I don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, as J.P. Morgan once said, gold is money, everything else is credit. And that's the world we live in.
Correct.
So.
And Jim, I've heard you in the past too talk about art as a possibility, fine art as a possibility, and recently about loose diamonds. How does that play into? Well,
loose diamonds and fine art are really good for smuggling. No, they are because
okay.
The thing about gold is, so an attaché case with $1 million in $100 bills weighs 22.2 pounds. That's how much it weighs. So you can fit $1 million into an attaché case. It will not set off a metal detector if you're not carrying anything else. 22 pounds, it's heavy, but you can do it. Gold is, of course, much heavier. $1 million worth of gold. Well, now you got me. I got to do the math, but that's going to weigh close to 500 ounces. 500 ounces at $2,000 an ounce. We're not quite there. That's $1 million worth of gold. Well, 500 ounces is, I think, 36 pounds. Again, do the math. But that's just a little heavier than the 22 pounds of $100 bills. But diamonds are pretty light. They're dense, but you can get a lot of value, which will not set off a metal detector. By the way, this is just a technical lecture. I'm not encouraging smuggling, but relatively, and that is why people use diamonds, because they're lightweight, they're compact. You get a lot of value for the weight, and they don't set off metal detectors. But I actually did the math on all this once, you can probably tell, and the best was like fine art, because now when I say fine art, I'm talking like a Picasso or Andy Warhol or something, because if you cut take the canvas off the mount, the frame, and weigh it, and so you can get $100 million. Let's just say 10 million. Let's be conservative. You can get $10 million of value, and the weight is like 2 pounds. So you do the math. It's like that has higher value per weight than diamonds, gold, and cash. So it's actually the best medium to smuggle, but also the best medium to preserve wealth, and doesn't set off metal detectors. And that's why people do it. I once bought some art in Brazil. It wasn't $10 million, but it was a street artist who was kind of up and coming. I figured maybe it's the new Banksy or whatever. So I bought the print, and I tried. I didn't think twice. I had it like in a portfolio, and I was carrying it through customs in the Buenos Aires. I know it was in Sao Paulo, the Sao Paulo airport. And my daughter, who's also my business manager, she says, "Dad, they're not going to let you take that through. Are you crazy? You got to check it and all this stuff." And she was right. They looked it over pretty closely. But by weight, fine art is the best way to do that. Now, but it's also true if you're just trying to, keep it in safekeeping, keep it in a vault, et cetera. And I visited with some of the biggest vault operators in the world in their operations near Zurich, and talked to the head of not just gold storage, but precious metals and fine art. And he said there was just a ton of stuff coming in. They couldn't build the vault space fast enough, and a lot of it was coming from the banks. They were like getting it out of Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, UBS, and into private vaults like Loomis and Brinks, because they're not banks and they're not regulated the same way. So yeah, they all have a place. The thing with fine art, as opposed to gold, one of the good things about gold, it's an element, atomic number 79. You can like it, hate it, talk it up, talk it down, but it's gold. There's no controversy about what it is. Art, the valuations are subjective, they're variable, and I think if you want to use it as a store of wealth, you really got to be talking about what I call museum quality. So, Picasso, Andy Warhol, Marcel Duchamp, Basquiat. I'm not a big fan of this Damien Hirst guy, but fandom doesn't matter. But it sort of has to be that quality, because if it's not, museum quality knows, because if it's not, it's going to be off the run, and you're always going to rely on a dealer, and there might not be dealers in the world we're talking about. So yeah, fine art has a place, but it's got to be really, really good, what I call museum quality.
And you've got to know good art from bad art, because I wouldn't tell the difference. I would be buying all these fakes, I'm sure.
And Marcel Duchamp gave a famous speech once. He wasn't very outgoing, personable, but not very outgoing. He didn't really care about publicity. But he only gave like one speech. It was like 3 pages. But he said, we don't really know what's good for 100 years. Like, it's only after you die and all the critics are dead that a consensus may form that, yeah, that was pretty good. So even then, you're taking a chance.
That's great.
So Jim, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. We'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about
Strategic Intelligence newsletter, because it's so valuable.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have a newsletter, Strategic Intelligence. Our publisher is Paradigm Press. So if you just Google, Jim Rickards, Strategic Intelligence, Paradigm, it'll come up. It's we put a lot into it. We've actually, I do about 5,000 to 6,000 words a month. It comes out monthly. But over 12 months, it's like a book. It's like 75,000 words. So we put our heart and soul into it. But we've recently expanded the list of other contributors. And now, yes, I still do my flagship, my anchor article, 6,000 words. But we have Byron King, who's a great, mining and also military expert. George Gilder, one of the great futurists of all time, and others who are contributing to this, so you get even more, and it's a good price point. We have other more expensive publications that we hope people consider, but Strategic Intelligence is a good starter.
And what I love is it's very up to date. It's up to date. It's what's on your mind today.
When I get off this interview, I'm going to finish this month's issue. Yep. So it's 100% current. And then at the end of November 29th, my new book, Sold Out, will be available. It'll be on the shelves. It's available for pre-order now, Sold Out. And this is about the supply chain. I finished writing it around March. I've updated it a little bit. It's very fresh, but people go, well, Jim, if you finish writing the book in March, how come it's not coming out till November? And I tell them my supply chain book is being delayed by the supply chain.
We know that problem well here with books and games.
The paper's made in Finland, not enough truck drivers, et cetera. So, but it'll be out November 29th, Sold Out, available on Amazon.
Great. Wonderful.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. We have, from Scott Shermick, myself and I, thank you. All the people listening in, your information is priceless and timely. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
And we come back, we'll have a final wrap-up from our interview with the infamous and famous Jim Rickards. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki. We want to thank Jim Rickards. I mean, my God, if you want credible source, somebody's an insider, that's the guy. So please check him out constantly. I'm always on his YouTube podcasts and his letters and all this, because today everything's changing so rapidly. So we'll wrap it up. So Sarah, what'd you pick up from Jim this time?
Well, we had studied that 14067 executive order about a month ago, but I'm starting to see different things pop up. I saw an AARP commercial last night, and it's telling seniors, if you go to the gym, you earn 200 points. If you eat healthy, you can log it in this app and you earn 50 points.
So it's already happening.
They're training our brains to do good things to earn points. And I was like, this is so perfect ahead of the Jim Rickards interview. So yeah, I think they're already doing it. I think when we saw the stimulus packages come out during COVID, we were already training ourselves to see that money arrive in our bank automatically. So very scary stuff. And I'll put a link to Jim Rickards' Strategic Intelligence newsletter in the description. So you don't have to Google it. I'll link it right in the description.
And to that point, if they can put money into your account, they can take money from your account.
Absolutely.
And that's a little scary.
So, Scott, what did you pick up?
Well, I liked Jim's practical advice. We all feel government is changing in this country, and it's getting more restrictive. We see examples from around the world, and Jim's advice is a warning to all of us and practical solutions on how we can protect ourselves. And I think we should heed his warning.
Yeah, as I said, he's been warning us for as long as I've been following, but this time the tom-tom beats are getting louder and louder and more, do it now,
Exactly.
basically.
Yeah, and I think
we're out of time.
I think that's a good word, Scott, is practical. I wrote that down earlier, his advice, even, for the 1 ounce silver coin, but then you can get a 1/4 ounce because that's going to be more easy to trade. And it changes the way we're thinking. It changes the way I'm thinking. I can't believe we're even having this conversation, that we've come this far, this fast. But he has always been, as you said, Robert, warning and hitting on the drum and saying, hey, pay attention, wake up.
We don't have time anymore.
We do not.
Time is out.
Yep.
Right. And I think everybody sees that.
Yeah.
now.
And then this morning I got a text from Tom Wheelwright, our tax guy, and he's the author of Tax-Free Wealth. He just said California just now took control of wages in California of fast food industry. So that's wage and price controls. That's pure Marxism. So, California is the, People's Republic of California. And I don't know anybody who lives there. I really don't, because you can see what's coming next. So anyway, I want to thank you all listening for the Rich Dad Radio Show. This will be an extended program because the information is priceless. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you.